Hey there folks, I'm Cody Campbell with High Ground Gaming. Today we are unboxing and reviewing the XPG Precog S. I'm going to start by walking you through the specs, then I'll open it up, let you take a look at what comes in the box. After that we'll go to the review portion where I'll give you my thoughts on it, and then we'll go to High Ground Gaming's final score. Stick around. So this is a budget headset, so it's not going to have a ton of features, but I could find surprisingly little information about it online. I know that it has 50mm drivers, I know that it is a wired headset, and I know that it has an omnidirectional microphone. But that's pretty much it. So I'm going to go ahead and just open it up. We'll take a look at what it's got built into it, and then we'll talk more about how it works during the review portion. So it looks like we've got some instructions right on top here, and then in the bag we've got the headset, and it looks like that's pretty much it. It's got a very thickly braided cable. I've seen a lot of braided cables, but not usually one like this. That's interesting. Already plugged into it, we have a 2-prong adapter for PC. One of these should be, yep, here's the microphone and here's the headset. So right off the bat, we have some kind of interesting design choices here. Instead of having an adjustable head bar like most headsets have, we have this retractable inner headband, sort of like what the Arctis headsets use, but it doesn't come around the top like that one does. It just sort of has these retractable, like inner sort of bungee cables. They're very thin. I would be super concerned about one of these breaking, because at that point the headband is not going to work at all anymore. Cushioning on the right and left ear cup are coated in this sort of mesh material. I've seen other headsets use this. Some people like it because it's supposed to be more breathable than leatherette, and that's valid, but I've never been that big a fan of it, largely because I have a beard and my hairs tend to kind of snag in this, and that's a little uncomfortable for me personally. It also feels just a little bit more coarse on the skin than leatherette. Let me try it out real quick. Yeah, it's a little on the coarse side. It's not super comfy. It's not terrible, like it's not uncomfortable to wear. It's just not as comfortable as leatherette. It looks like there's a good range of rotation, and it feels like it's just tight enough. I reviewed a headset recently that had like very loose rotation. I wasn't a big fan of it. This has just a tight enough rotation that it holds its position, but it's loose enough that you can move it easily. It also looks like the ear cups themselves have a little bit of up and down rotation as well. Not a huge range, but more than enough. The microphone looks like it holds its position pretty well. It looks like there's some extreme angles it doesn't want to go into, but as long as you can get in front of your mouth, it's good enough, right? It doesn't seem to be removable, and it also doesn't have a flip to mute function. I don't think it has... Oh, there's a mute button on the bottom here, or a mute switch on the bottom here, so that's how you mute it. And then we have a volume dial on the back side of the left ear cup. The microphone also doesn't seem to come with any sort of pop filter, so you're probably going to have an issue with some plosives using this mic. That looks to be about it though. There's not much else to say just by looking at it. So I'm going to go ahead and plug this into my computer. I'll play some games with it, and we'll be right back with the review portion. Don't go anywhere. So now I've spent some time with the XPG Precog S, and I'm ready to talk about it. But first, if you haven't already, please hit the like and subscribe button. All right, let's dive in and start by talking about the build quality. And I'm gonna start by talking about the stuff I like about this headset. First of all, it's sleek. It looks nice. It's made entirely of plastic, but it doesn't look like it's made entirely of plastic. It doesn't have that chunky play toy feel to it. It looks like a nice piece of gaming equipment, which is pretty cool. I also want to say that it's very lightweight, which can be nice for long gaming sessions. You don't want a big heavy thing sitting on your head the whole time. Unfortunately, there are some not so great things about it as well. I already mentioned the super thin cables on this, but another thing that I found to be a slightly bigger problem is that I think it grips a little too tightly. Now, I have a pretty big head, so when this thing is really gripping and clamping down on me. That might not be a problem that people with smaller heads have, but I found that over really long gaming sessions, it did start to grow uncomfortable. I also want to mention that the mesh material that this is made of, it is pretty scratchy, and what's underneath of it isn't actually memory foam, it's just some other generic foam. It doesn't have quite as much give as memory foam would. It's not quite as plush or soft. It feels pretty firm after prolonged use. Also, the dial on the side is fine, but this switch on the bottom here, that's a little jiggly, which wouldn't be that big of a deal, except you can hear it rattling when you're wearing it, when you're trying to find it to switch the mute button. Not a huge deal, just a little bit annoying. I covered most of the rest of the physical stuff when I was talking about these in the unboxing, so let's move on to sound quality. And that's probably where these shine the most. These have a nice wide soundstage. Audio doesn't feel like it's coming from right next to your ear. It feels like it's coming from far away, and it gives you more of a spatial feel, even though it's still just studio audio. It's not the strongest sounding audio I've ever heard. It definitely doesn't compare to higher end headsets, but it is pretty good given the price point that these come in at. The only real downside to them is that there's really no noise cancellation whatsoever. There's a lot of sound pollution that gets in through the mesh ear cups. So if you wear these while you're gaming, you're definitely going to hear what's going on in the room around you. You're going to hear people talking. Some people prefer that, other people don't, so that's really a matter of personal preference. Now we're going to talk about the mic quality, and that, unfortunately, is where things get pretty bad. I mentioned before that it holds its shape pretty well. That's nice, but it's not removable and it doesn't flip up. That means that the mic is always going to be in the downward position. It's always going to be right in front of your mouth. That wouldn't be awful if it was a decent mic. Unfortunately, it is not. Here's a quick audio clip of what it sounds like.
So here's a quick audio test for the XPG Precog S microphone. I've listened to it a couple times, so I already know that it doesn't really sound great. It kind of reminds me of when you hear the 911 calls on the news, that like 90s telephone quality that is, yeah, just not pleasant to listen to. I've also noticed that sometimes it tends to cut out a little bit, meaning that it's not particularly clear either, which if you're playing any sort of competitive games and you need to interact with your teammates, it's really important that they understand what you're saying. So yeah, if that's something that you need in a headset, then I'd probably give this a pass. It's also a little frustrating that the mic is so weak, since even if you're not really interested in the microphone, it's not detachable and it doesn't flip up, so it's always going to be right in your face even if you don't want to use it.
So yeah, not only does it not sound very good, it's not super clear, which is the most important part when it comes to a headset microphone. If you're playing Valorant or Apex Legends or any sort of team-based game, the whole reason you have a headset is so that you can communicate with your teammates. You let them know where enemies are, you let them know where you're headed, you forge plans together. If the mic is unclear and your teammates can't understand what you're saying very well, that inhibits your ability to communicate. So if you like any sort of game like that, unfortunately, I think you're probably better off looking for a different headset. Also, because it does not come with a pop filter, those P's, those plosives, the p sounds are really going to get picked up by this mic. Other than that, there's not much else to talk about. There's no software to speak of for this headset or anything else. So without further ado, let's get down to the verdict. So the XPG Precog 2's MSRP at $39.99. It's definitely on the more affordable side of gaming headsets in general, but it still seems a little ambitious for these guys. Around that same price, you can also find the Razer Black Shark V2 headset, which is one of the more highly rated wired gaming headsets out there. You can also find the Logitech G332s for even a little bit cheaper than these. So with all that in mind, we decided to give these a 2.5 out of 5, which is a pretty low score for us. The sound quality isn't bad, so it's unfortunate that the microphone is so terrible, and there's just a few issues with the build quality that kind of ruin an otherwise really nice design. If these were in the $25 range instead of the $40 range, they would crush the competition at that price point. But as it stands, with the current market being what it is, there's just better headsets for $40, so it's hard to recommend these. Why don't you go ahead and drop down into the comments and let us know what you think, though. Is a good sound enough to make a $40 headset worthwhile, or does XPG need to step up their game in a couple of these other categories before you're ready to look at their peripherals? While you're at it, please like and subscribe if you haven't already. We have a lot more content coming really soon, another headset review coming really soon, in fact. So I don't want you to miss that. All right, everyone. Thanks for watching. Happy gaming.